I don't know what to say to her.
There are other worries. Dan had no insurance and Kelly has no job. But at the moment, that all seems so trivial after all that she's seen.
And I caught the plane going into the building, and that's all the first night I could think about was I could picture him on it. I don't know if he knew anything or what, but
An image, she says, that will stay with her forever and ever. Ann McDermott, CNN, Los Angeles.
Wow. CNN's continuing coverage of America's new war continues in a moment. We'll see again at 10 o'clock tonight.
President Bush delivers his strongest words yet about the U.S. response to Tuesday's terrorist attacks. I'm Wolf Blitzer in Washington.
And I'm Joey Chen at CNN Center in Atlanta. We want to begin by updating you on the day's developments.
President Bush called Osama bin Laden the, quote, prime suspect in Tuesday's attacks, repeating a pledge that the United States will respond.
We're at war. There's been an act of war declared upon America by terrorists, and we will respond accordingly. And I appreciate very much the American people understanding that. As we plan, as we put our strategy into action, we will let you know when we think it's appropriate, not only for to protect the lives of our servicemen and women, but to make sure our coalition has had proper time to be noticed as well. But we're going to act.
On the investigative front, CNN has learned that two hijackers aboard the plane that crashed into the Pentagon were being watched by U.S. intelligence because of an alleged connection to the attack on the USS Cole off Yemen last October. Meantime, the INS has detained 25 individuals on possible immigration violations. Among them, two men who authorities say were carrying box cutters aboard a Newark to San Antonio flight that was diverted Tuesday after the four hijackings unfolded. The flight data and cockpit voice recorders have been recovered from the Pentagon and the Pennsylvania crash sites, but not from the World Trade Center. Round-the-clock search and rescue efforts continue at Ground Zero in Lower Manhattan. New York's police commissioner says the death toll stands at 152, with nearly 5,000 people still missing. Firefighters laid to rest 3 of their own today, including Reverend Michael Judge, a fire department chaplain who was delivering last rites to a firefighter killed in the attack on the first tower. Reverend Judge was killed in the crush of the second tower's collapse. And Continental Airlines, citing an industry slowdown resulting from the terror attacks, announced today that it's furloughing some 12,000 employees. Continental CEO is making an urgent appeal to Congress to keep the airline industry afloat. A measure that would have provided $2.5 billion to the airline industry was defeated today in the House of Representatives. Joey?
All right, as you have just heard, the language coming from President Bush is anything but subtle. CNN's Kelly Wallace is following the commander-in-chief and joins us now live with the latest out there. Kelly.
Well, Joey, definitely the toughest talk yet from President Bush since Tuesday's deadly terrorist attacks. The president appears to be trying to do a couple of things. Number one, sending a message to U.S. troops and to the American people to get ready for what could be a long-term military campaign, but also knowing that the American people are angry and hungry for some swift retaliatory attack. The president also saying that Americans should be patient, that his response will come in time. Now, President Bush started his day getting his normal national security briefings, and then having a 3-hour meeting with his national security team. As you can see, also at that meeting, of course, Vice President Dick Cheney. The Vice President has been spending the past couple of days up at Camp David after the Secret Service determined, based on security concerns, that it would be best not to have the President and the Vice President in the same place. Before that meeting got underway, Mr. Bush, talking at length with reporters, he said that the U.S. will get the terrorists, those responsible for these deadly attacks, no matter what it takes.
They will try to hide. They will try to avoid the United States and our allies. But we're not going to let them. They run to the hills. They find holes to get in. And we will do whatever it takes to smoke them out and get them running, and we'll get them.
And when asked if the president's words are a way for him to start laying the groundwork for using ground troops to attack terrorists and those who harbor them, the president's spokesman, Ari Fleischer, saying that nothing has been ruled out. Now, Mr. Bush is expected to have dinner this evening with members of his national security team and then have more meetings on Sunday. The president also expected to keep working the phones. He spoke with the leaders of Spain and Mexico today. Also, Joey, Secretary of State Colin Powell confirming what CNN has been reporting since yesterday, that the Pakistanis have agreed to fully cooperate with U.S. requests, and the U.S., according to sources, has asked the Pakistanis to allow U.S. planes to use Pakistani or fly over Pakistani airspace if the U.S. determines and decides to take any military action. Joey, back to you.
Kelly, does the president have any further plans to, we have seen him a couple of times this week speaking directly to the American public. Has he any other plans for another sort of formal address given the developments over the last couple of days?
Not at this time. You know, the president's schedule, we're really not getting details, basically just learning about his events as they happen. The president did talk directly to the American people in his radio address today, another time where he was basically calling on Americans to be patient and laying out the case for what he plans to do. Again, we don't have word about his schedule, but you can expect that this president will continue to go before the American people because he knows that there's tremendous support right now for some military response, but keeping up that support will definitely be a bigger and bigger challenge the more time goes on. And Joey, of course, a bigger challenge too if any prolonged military attack involves some U.S. troops losing their lives. So expect to see the president going before the American people to continue to explain what he plans to do, and obviously, definitely to go before the American people once any action is taken. Joey?
CNN White House correspondent Kelly Wall is joining us and traveling with the president today. Wolf.
By calling up more than 50,000 reservists for what's described as, quote, homeland defense, President Bush has already taken a key step toward mobilizing the United States military. CNN's Jamie McIntyre joins us now from the Pentagon with the latest on that front. Jamie, what's going on today?
Well, some of those reservists may be getting their notices within the next couple of days. In fact, some reservists have already been called up, some Coast Guard reservists, to begin increasing patrols along America's coast. This phrase you're going to be hearing now, homeland defense, is something that the United States is going to be putting more emphasis on. Up until now, war hasn't touched U.S. soil in this century, or even in the last century, but there is going to be a much greater emphasis on increasing security and protecting the United States. At the same time, here at the Pentagon is not just office space for Pentagon workers, it's also a symbol of the U.S. military and the arsenals of democracy. Because of that, it's very important that this historic building be rebuilt, according to Pentagon officials. And today they announced that the first contracts had been let to begin the rebuilding process as soon as all of the remains have been cleared away and the building has been shored up. They released some video today showing the inside of the building, the devastating damage where 189 people died, 64 of them on that airplane. They will have to renovate about 4 million square feet of this building and remove about 350 million pounds of debris before they can start rebuilding the building. They'll have to strip it down to the columns, but they do say they will get that done within a couple of years and that they will have that wedge of the Pentagon back in business as soon as it is possible. Wolf?
Jamie, as you know, the Pentagon's been undergoing a massive renovation that's going to supposedly take many years. Is this going to set back the overall plan to rebuild the Pentagon?
Well, that remains to be seen. I mean, obviously it is a setback. The Pentagon was supposed to be renovated entirely by 2012. And in fact, this area the renovations had just been completed, and they were about to move to the next wedge of the building. The Pentagon is divided into 5 wedges. Now they're going to be rebuilding that wedge while the new wedge that had just been refurbished along with the second one, and they'll be putting a lot of effort into doing that still within the same overall time frame. But the commitment here is to put the building back together in better shape than it was originally, restoring its original limestone facade and incorporating the latest in security features, blast-proof windows, fire retardant walls, and sprinkler systems. All of the features, they say, that in the newly renovated wedge of the Pentagon help to save a lot of lives, and that this death toll of 126 people in the building, or 125 people in the building who were killed, would have been much higher had they not had some of those new security features in that part of the building.
And Jamie, getting back to the report that you've been giving us about the call-up of the reserves of the National Guard, well, what about calling up additional reservists and National Guard troops if, in fact, an offensive military plan is formulated and begins to go into operation? Any indication at all about plans going forward on that front?
Well, Pentagon officials are downplaying the idea that there's going to be any imminent military action and any imminent additional call-up of reserves, but they say that that certainly is an option down the road. Now, part of the emphasis of this administration and Pentagon is to keep secret things secret. They want to try to keep as much operational security as possible about their future plans, and so it's going to be a little difficult to figure out, and we may not even want to report on what it is they have in mind. But at this point, there's no indication of imminent military action. If the U.S. were to launch some large-scale operation, it would inevitably result in the call-up of more reserves, because the way the military is organized these days, it depends on the reserves for many key job specialties.
Jamie McIntyre, our military affairs correspondent at the Pentagon, thank you very much. Back to you, Joey.
Well, if you can see the operation underway at this hour in Lower Manhattan, take a look at the picture, a live picture from Lower Manhattan at this hour as the work continues, a desperate effort to find any remaining survivors at the World Trade Center site. Unfortunately, we are sorry to report to you today that the number of missing has tragically grown. CNN's Richard Roth is following now from our overview vantage point in Lower Manhattan with the latest on the rescue efforts. Richard.
Overview of Ground Zero, and sadly the number of missing unaccounted for has grown to 4,972. That's about 200 higher than the total since this disaster erupted. Officials explain the count went up due to missing person out-of-town reports filed outside of New York City and Manhattan, and more relatives trickling into New York City crisis centers. Authorities say 152 bodies have been pulled so far from the rubble, 18 of them firefighters, and more than 100 hours, 100 hours, more than 4 days after the planes hit the towers, there's really been no significant discovery of survivors. No pings, no knocks, no cries, just tons of wreckage coming up, and that's what they've been working on in assembly lines, chains, hands clawing in there, trying to get whatever they can out, and then the trucks take a lot of the debris to Staten Island. The bodies are taken away also. The workers have got a boost from the visit of President Bush yesterday, but still haven't given up hope yet. Some think there are some pockets where people could be, areas that have almost relatively remained untouched, reported CNN's Marty Savage an hour ago, but they still haven't found any survivors. Now, a minor part of the story, though, of course, those that have survived, the people who lived in the neighborhood and on the Lower East Side of Manhattan and the Tribeca area, downtown New York City. Those people are there, but also the financial center. In the financial district, there were tests done on the computer, the utility lines. Workers swarmed in. New York Stock Exchange Chairman Richard Grasso says all systems are go for an opening of the stock market on 9:30 on Monday morning. Instead, the traders are going to pause for 2 minutes before the trading goes on. To honor those killed, everyone will be singing God Bless America, and instead of corporate executives or even Michael Jackson, boy, doesn't that seem like a long time ago when he rang, or so to speak, the NASDAQ start of the market a week ago or so. It'll be rescue workers. Various agency heads will ring the opening bell of the New York Stock Exchange. Richard Grasso, the head of the exchange, asked traders to use and take time and reason for the decisions involving their transactions starting on Monday. Also returning will be those who live in the area, and they went back. Some of them were given only 10 minutes of time to get into their homes and check their belongings, check their pets. Some 25,000 people live in the area. New York City police, though, have had to deal with a lot of tourists and onlookers, a lot of people bringing cameras.